Hi guys, welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. Tonight's session, the Citizen CATE experiment, going to be presented by Burton Briggs. But as always, before we show that up, I'm going to show up our image of the week. And I'll tell you a funny story while I'm doing it. Of course, today, first of all, beautiful image, NGC 7000. And I keep getting, I keep having the same issue, and this one may be partially my fault, but the person who submitted this, I don't know who it is, because down, well, you don't see it spelled out, but I give the option to give us the name, the object, and the description. And it's happened to me over and over again a few times now, where both the person put the object's name in both the name and the object. So I already knew the object, but I still don't know your name. So whoever did this, NGC 7000, let me know if you're in chat. Drop me an email. I think you did email me actually a few weeks, maybe a week back or whatever. And I looked for it, but I couldn't find it. So just let me know who you are, and I'll make sure you get credit for this pretty cool image. So that's it. That's all I've got. I'm going to pop back over and get rid of that screen share. And Burton is in the room and waiting. So Burton, I'm going to hand it right over to you.
Thank you, Adam. We'll try and make this work. Several months ago, I read an ad wanting volunteers to participate in what sounded like an interesting project from the National Science Observatory. And it had to do with taking video of this eclipse that's coming up in August. And it's interesting. I'll give some background to eclipses and so on before we get to the nitty-gritty details. You can see here in the middle of continental US, the August 2017 eclipse. Then there's another one coming up April of 2024, which is going to cross the same path in Carbondale, Illinois. And the following one will be August 12 of 2045. Now, not so many of us are going to be around for that one. But anyway, there seems to have generated a lot of excitement about the current one that's coming up next month. Living in Idaho, I've concentrated more on the aspects of the eclipse as it relates to the state of Idaho. We're tucked in, you know, sort of between Montana and Washington, and nobody knows where we are. Currently, I'm located about 30 miles from Boise, and the town I live in is Emmett. We're right on the edge of the southern border of the totality band, and we'll get probably 11 seconds of it here. So the site that I've been assigned to is up further north, and we'll drive to that. Pardon?
No, keep going. Here's
kind of representation of what the shadow will look like as it passes over the state. If you have look at it in terms of diameter, it's roughly 60 miles. If you do it on a diagonal, it'll be about 90 miles in diameter. The eclipse at the site where I'm going to be at, which is Crouch, Idaho. It starts about 10:11 in the morning. Totality will start about an hour and 15 minutes later at 11:26, and will last for 2 minutes and 4 seconds. The speed of the shadow is running roughly 2,900 miles an hour, and it takes about 8 minutes for it to cross the state of Idaho, which is roughly 400 miles in the path of totality. The total path across the U.S. is about 2,500 miles. It takes 4 hours, 30 minutes. There are some 12 million people who live in the path of totality. That they don't have to go anywhere to see totality. but there have been some various estimates that between 1.8 and 7.4, now there's quite a standard deviation there, of people who will drive to the area of totality. Idaho, given a number of factors which I'll talk about later, presents an interesting destination for people coming from both all over the world as well as from the Southwest. I got to throw this in just because in using this for outreach, need to remind people about looking at it without some type of eye protection. There is no pain sensors in the retina. And there's been reported a couple of cases where somebody had glass filters on their telescope. The filters shattered due to the heat that was generated, and the individual lost his eyesight for a period of time. It wasn't permanent, but there was some residual damage. So extreme care needs to be used when viewing the sun through magnifying instruments. Pinhole box is one option. It's not very expensive. It promotes a bit of closeness, and is a great way for kids to see what's going on. And you can see this is from the annular eclipse back in 2012, with just the beginning of the eclipse showing. Stands for Continental America Telescopic Experiment, or Eclipse, excuse me. And this is a project that was, what shall I say, conceived or thought of about 2 years ago. In 2015, the folks at NSO, Matt Penn specifically, thought that there has been no attempt at recording totality and the corona for any length of time. Usually it lasts in the 2-minute range, sometimes up to 5 minutes. And they only get a very few frames of the corona. And so wanting to study the dynamics and the statistics of the corona, they proposed this experiment. The experiment consists of trying to put together some 68 sites across the continental US in the path of totality, and to capture in sequence from each of these sites the corona as shown in the third object here on this picture. This is a composite picture taken a year ago, and you can see the plumes, etc., that comes from that. But it's a static picture. They want to try and get video to see what changes take place dynamically. The purpose is to study, obviously, the motion that occurs in the corona, the polar flume, the intensity, does it vary, the motion of the prominences, coronal inflow and outflow, coronal mass ejections, temperature changes. Everybody says in the eclipse it gets cooler. Well, how much? Several of the sites have these infrared thermometers. You can aim at something, and they are planning to take temperatures every 10 minutes of somebody, their skin, the ground, of cement, items that are commonly out within the heat, and to see if it changes, how much it changes, and how fast it changes. Now, if you consider the logistics of setting this up, it is quite a challenge. Fortunately, there was support from the National Science Foundation, the Association of Universities for Astronomical Research, NSO, National Science Observatory, NASA, Daystar Filters help provide equipment along with MathWorks, Celestron, Color Maker, and the Research Corporation for Science Advancement, Exploratorium, American Museum of Natural History, Tennessee Tech, Moorhead, Southwestern Community College. So there's been broad support generated by this particular experiment. Now there are 68 sites. They will consist of citizens who think they're scientists maybe, and they are scientists. There's 20 high schools, 20 universities, astronomy clubs, informal groups of people who are interested in this. 5 national research labs are involved and 5 corporate sponsors. Now the path, as you can see here, covers essentially North America. And it is everybody within this framework will see some degree of eclipse. Here's a little bit of a movie showing from a satellite perspective of what it would look like. It comes into the coast, it crosses Salem, just north of us with Boise, through Casper, south of Omaha, north of Kansas City, south of St. Louis, down through by north of Nashville, Athens, and out through Charleston. If you remember the path for the 1 in 2042, I think it was, it's going to be somewhat south of here, and we'll go through Northern California and come out southern Florida. See if I can get out of this. Now, one of the factors that you want to consider is what's the chance of seeing it? What's your percentage of cloud cover? If you're going to spend money coming from Europe or South America, Australia, or the Far East, where are you going to go? And you're probably going to pick the places that have the least amount of cloud cover. Now, if you look here on the left-hand axis, you'll see percentages of cloud cover. At Madras, Oregon, you're down to about 17%. Mitchell, probably 15%. Ontario, Oregon, which is just 30 miles west of me, they're about 20%. And then you get into the Sawtooth Range and your chances of cloud cover go higher. You get out in eastern Idaho, near Idaho Falls, in that area, again, you get back into the Snake River Basin and your cloud cover chance is much less. And as you can see, once you cross over into Casper, Wyoming, and so on, it keeps, the chances of cloud cover keeps climbing and climbing till you get in the Piedmont, you know you have an 80% chance of cloud cover. So that obviously tends to influence people where they're going to want to go. Now you look over here on the right-hand side, there's a place called Carbondale, Illinois. Interesting, it's the place where the 2024 and our current 2017 total solar eclipses will cross, and they're making hay out of that, saying that's the eclipse capital of the United States. They're trying to draw a lot of traffic that way. In the little town of Weiser, where I began helping the high school students, it's a town of 5,000. They're expecting 50,000 people or more to show up. And that's going to put quite a strain on the logistics in the town, to say the least. Anyway, each site is equipped the same. Celestron has donated the CG4 series of mounts and tripods. These are battery operated. There's one individual who's climbing Mount Bora here, the highest peak in Idaho, and setting up, he's carrying his equipment. And so being battery operated obviously has its advantages for him. But Daystar Equipment has provided the telescopes. They are 80 millimeter scopes at f6.25, given the focal length of 500 millimeters. Point gray cameras have been donated. A couple of yellow, a yellow filter and an IR blocking filter. We're using those in hopes of increasing the contrast in the images that we acquire. Now there's an interesting piece of equipment called the Adreno. You can see the GPS antenna with the trapezoid box at the end of it. That will pick up the satellite signals, and the other cable will connect to the camera. This functions as a means of getting precise location and timestamp. And it also serves as a means of triggering the camera. The frames that are going to be taken, in order to standardize them, they've gone through this mechanism. It's like a raspberry, and so it will be used to control the camera. Thousand Oaks filters are provided, a neutral density one, and an Acer laptop with the programs already in there. They've been updated several times, and that provides us some interesting work here in preparation to make sure that all the files are in the right folders and they function sequentially as they're supposed to. Now, when we get to the actual program that runs the camera, it's divided here into a series of tabs at the top of our screen. As you can see, the GPS tab, you find the port that it's located, and the GPS data is downloaded continuously during all the frame acquisitions. There's an alignment tab so that you have good alignment with the pole, or it's actually drift alignment with the sun. Focusing is another issue, and you have to consider that they're taking groups of people, from high school students to college students to people who have never had their hands on a telescope to people who are experts at it, and trying to teach them to align through drift alignment, critical focus on the sun in the daylight, and doing calibration, getting calibration frames. So the logistics of doing this has presented an interesting problem. We have, I don't want to say required times that we take films, but there are specific dates that they'd like us to take, run this series of frames, and then submit them so that they can test the equipment that they're going to use to take each one of these frames and compose them into a 90-minute video. This means that the alignment, the drift, the focus, all have to be precise and essentially the same. It gets 68 sites with at least anywhere from 1 to 5 people in each site to do the same thing the same time and be ready. Has been quite an interesting project. This is a slide of the alignment tab. The sun is, well, let me put it this way, the mount is moved so that the sun is in the circle. And the amount of drift, this is while it's tracking, is adjusted, controlled by the azimuth and altitude. It is interesting that the high school students, this is boring stuff, so they tend to do it real short. They've had more problems with getting the high school students to get the alignment than some of the more senior operators, who tend to be a little slower and take time to make sure alignment is critical. And it does make quite a difference in terms of the ability to take the frames at the end of the project, process them, and come out with hopefully some useful data. There's a drift tab, and the function of the drift tab is to check the orientation of your camera. The drift with the tracking off should be straight horizontal. If your camera is rotated slightly, it'll cause a diagonal drift, and that creates other issues when trying to align up these frames to make the aim for video. Then we have calibration. A lot of this is not new to you folk, but they're getting sky flats. We turn the scope 90 degrees so we don't get any light down the scope, and take a series of 100 exposures against a clear sky. We do sky darks, and then we do darks for during drift with the tracking off. The last calibration in here, it says totality darks. This is with the dust cover or the cap on the camera, on the telescope, and it is a way of checking that the Adreno is triggering the camera as it should, and that we are going to get pictures of the sun during totality. If you screw up and you miss it, you don't have a chance to turn around and do it again. Then the totality tab, as soon as Bailey beads show, the caps come off the camera or off the telescope, and we start a log of the frames that the camera's computerized control and capture. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for 8 different exposures, and they're acquired every 2 seconds. They will take this data and separate it into each of the individual components, process it, and try and make the video from it. So, practice, practice, practice. Here are the 3 students that I'm working with at Boise State University. Wes is on the left. Caleb is in the center reading instructions, and Karen is working the computer. Initially, I started and had them all do everything. And that got the nation of the intricacies of focusing, of alignment, etc. Subsequently, for the last 2 or 3 times that we've been out, I've assigned each one of them the mechanics of setting up the scope and focusing and finding the sun. And that was assigned to Wes. Caleb, I gave him the job of reading the, I want to say directions, a schedule, sequence of things that we have to go through with each tab, make sure that we don't miss something. And Karen is making sure that the exposures are correct and calling us out if we don't have something done that meets her qualifications. Karen is a senior physics astronomy student. The other 2 are junior or sophomore physics majors. And more practice. We've been going out essentially every Sunday. Occasionally during the middle of the week, we've gone out one time to do the moon and try and get an HDR picture of that so that they can test the equipment that is automating the selection of these videos, frames, and processing them. The last time we went to get the moon, we got moon clouded out. I might make one other comment going back to the clear sky chart. The whole thing up here is forest fires. And that's something we don't have much control over. And that just is in the cards. That's what I have to say. If you go and see it, be safe, enjoy the view, and get excited with a few of the rest of us that are, shall we say, a little off the deep end. Back to you, Adam.
Thank you, Burton. Thanks for your presentation. Oh, darn, I'm hearing reverberation. Let me see where that's coming from. It stopped. Okay. How difficult, let me take my camera back too, and I'll flip back and forth. How difficult or how worried are you about training? What went into the training of each individual? because you see, I know you commented that high school students might not have been as I don't know, willing to I guess rush through it or something. I've been in high school. I was in high school once, so I kind of know. It seems like a really difficult undertaking for someone who hasn't polar aligned before, so to speak.
It was interesting when the western section is supervised by a gal, Lynn Powers in Montana, and they had a gentleman, Russ, come out to Boise State, and the group from students from Boise State and from Weiser came over, and they went through the setup and what we were supposed to do and so on. Pretty rough instruction, but the instructions were to go home and practice, practice, practice. My initial assignment was with Weiser, and we were doing quite well, having a fun time with them, and they were catching on. In fact, their computer skills and mine were, they were much better at it than I was. Then the Brian Jackson, who was heading up the group at Boise State, had a conflict come up with a series he was doing, and so they asked me if I'd move over and help with the Boise State students. And it's interesting, there is that difference between the age group in terms of their willingness to take the time and be careful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think I'll have to assume university students are probably a little more, well, they really want the grade a lot more than the high school students. I don't know. I think when you hit college, you're like, I'm here to graduate. I'm not here to have fun or anything. So, you know,
it's interesting. The high school students can come every week for the practice sessions, even though it's summertime and they're out of school. That was one of the concerns we had. How consistent would they be? They just had about a 4-minute broadcast on the local TV station about the project that they're doing and their role in it, and it came across very nicely.
Hey, Burton, this is Alex.
Yes, sir.
You showed us that screen, and you've got you had 8 exposures on it.
Correct.
I could see. Now, that camera that you're using, is that a video-based camera, or is it taking single shots?
It's a point gray. I believe it's a video camera, but
So,
it's being computer controlled, and with the change in exposures, they're going to have to take single shots.
so when you said it's taking a picture every 2 seconds, it's integrating over 2 seconds and then reporting that as one picture and then another one and another one, or what's it doing?
Okay, it's taking a single snapshot, if I can use that term, at a different exposure all 8 within 2 seconds.
Okay, so it's taking 8 exposures every 2 seconds. And
Yes.
Those exposures vary from what, 1,000th or a 4,000th of a second up to a what, you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I have not gotten into the
But
program, and I
basically,
couldn't get answers.
You mechanically, grab the filter with your hand and remove it when you get signal to do so. And then it
Correct.
runs the rest of the time. And then you put the filter back on when it says to do so.
That is
that
correct.
Okay, so you're the remote filter remover, and it's taking care of everything else.
That is correct. And the trick is to pull that filter off and not screw up your alignment.
Yes. And what happens to the pictures? Okay, you've got 2 minutes every 2 seconds. That's 120. Well, you've got 60 sets of pictures.
Correct.
I think. Right? Okay, so you've got 66 sets of pictures to send someplace, or does it just gobble them up on the internet, or what does it do?
Okay, they're downloaded to the computer as they're being taken, and then at the end of the session, we will transfer all of our data the calibration data, the GPS data, and the pictures, and put them on 2 thumb drives. We'll store those in separate places until we can get back, in our case, get back to, shall we say, a place to post them, and then send them off to Matt Penn at NSO.
Matt's original idea of this, from what I understand, was that they would all be downloaded together, processed immediately, and stuck on CNN that night. Is that still?
Oh, that is the aim, except they are going to do that. We will upload some 8 different images, and they will not have all of the 8 that were in the final slide. There will be a calibration image, a drift image, a focus image, an HDR image, and a couple of more drift images.
And when will
those
that
are
be?
The ones that all those will be uploaded as soon as we can get to internet site. For our case, or if where they're located they have internet, they will be uploaded as soon as we're done, and then they are going to try and process them for that night.
Okay, so if I'm on the East Coast and this Eclipse gets over at 2:15, they've got 3 hours to make Anderson Cooper.
Yeah, they've got a lot of work to do.
That's what they're trying to do, though, right?
Yes.
They tried this down in Indonesia. Do you know anything about that?
In 2016, they went to Indonesia for that eclipse, and they sent a couple of students. It was primarily to work out the equipment logistics and the practicality of what equipment they needed, what computer support they needed, what programming, and so on. That was the beginning of this project. Okay.
So far, you guys haven't had a total eclipse to see if you're actually getting the pictures you want, right? I mean, it's going to be, you're testing it live right now on August 21st.
That's correct.
Okay. It seemed to me that the sun was taking up an awful lot of the frame in this picture. If the idea is to get a movie of the corona, it seems to me that you got an awful lot of sun compared to the corona, you know?
Yeah. I don't have an answer for you on that. There must have been some reason that they picked a 500 millimeter focal length scope to give that amount of magnification. The only thing I can think of is it may be more, there may be a larger frame than what we're seeing, but I can't verify that.
So the camera chip may be delivering more, but the software that you're using to look at is not.
Yeah, and that may be so that one can better look at, with a larger image on the software, we can do the alignment better and the focusing better.
Yeah, I may have magnified the central image for you. Yeah, they could have done that. Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Burton. Thank you. That was quite informative. I trust you guys will do, you know, everybody's doing it out there, and you got 68 different people doing it. We've got 2,100 miles. How many miles of Eclipse path is there? And you divide 40 to 21, so you're every 50 miles, we got one of you guys.
Yeah, every 50, 60 miles.
Okay. Well, I know that Soho can take pictures, or can take movies of the outer corona so that we can see how it moves. What we've never been able to do, and this is what Matt Penn was telling us earlier, what we've never been able to do is take a corona, an inner corona picture. The block on Soho cuts out the inner corona because it would hurt the cameras otherwise. So they've got a block on that. And during an eclipse like this is the only time we're going to be able to get a picture of the inner corona, and that's why this experiment is so important. So, Okay.
Burton, you're being asked by Elizabeth Warner, can we get copies of the control software? She does have a point gray camera and GPS for occultation work.
I would have to refer you to Lynn Powers. And then she would probably refer you to Honor Hare, who I think was a first-year college student who wrote the programs. But I cannot give it out without their permission.
Okay, and I should
And
point
I
out,
think
just maybe to save some time,
Pardon?
this is all run on an Arduino, right?
Yes.
So if you're planning on hooking your laptop up to it, it's a no-go. Basically, this is kind of an all-in-one Arduino package for acquisition. This is something us Deep Sky guys would like or are working towards, but keep that in mind so it's not PC or Mac compatible.
I don't know about the Mac, but it is PC compatible, obviously.
Oh, it is PC compatible.
Okay. Yes.
Well,
Oh.
it looks like you're using the Arduino for doing the camera control, right? And then maybe transferring the data to the laptop. But you still have a laptop you're using to connect and do your drift and all that sort of stuff, right?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Right.
Okay. I should have thought of that from thinking about the screenshots.
After the show, who gets the equipment?
The site gets to keep the equipment. Like
That's
the folks at Weezer will keep the equipment for future use. The stuff that I'm using will go to Boise State because it really was their site, and I have similar equipment except for the computer aspect of it.
For those of you who don't know Burton, he also takes some very stunning solar photographs with his own setup up there in Idaho.
When we see the sun.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to see the sun in April. I'm going to be up in Weezer. I know I'm going to miss you.
Good.
But I'll be up in Weezer.
Yeah, I was hoping to be over there with you guys. Just for the record, I got to give either Alex the credit or the lack of credit for keeping me involved and getting me involved in some astrophotography. It's a frustrating hobby.
Yeah, I've done that before.
Burton, this is Eric. Is there any estimate on how many gaps you're going to have in this just because of weather and clouds?
I don't know how. That's the big gamble, and you saw from that chart, the chances of cloud cover go tremendously once you get off the plains. So I have no idea what's going to happen. We don't even know here about the forest fires. Last summer, we were pretty well inundated with smoke for 2 to 3 weeks from a major fire up. Let's see, that would have been 60, 70 miles north of Boise. The wind, our wind is predominantly from the northwest, which would help for forest fires in the sawtooths. But if it switches, we're out of the picture.
And it all depends on where those fires are.
Yep. California's already had their share.
Oh, yeah. That's what we get for having rain this winter so that everything grew so it could burn this summer.
If you don't have rain, it's dry, it's going to be bad fire season. You have rain, it's got a lot of fire, it's going to be bad fire season.
We get the fire season no matter what, but when we get rains, we get a lot more water. Things grow, and then it still turns dry during the summer, so there's a lot more stuff to burn.
Yep. All right. Well, any other questions out there? Or in the room for that matter? I think we're all wishing Burton luck.
And Burton, can you come back and tell us how you guys did eventually? Maybe report on it all and what your experiences were with it. Maybe not a whole show, but at least a few minutes worth of it, you know?
Yeah, I think it'd be fun. Supposedly, we have access to the all the data after it gets processed.
Cool.
Oh, they give you all access to it?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, that'd be fun.
You
Will
get your
it be
name on
accessible
publication.
by any one of us, or will just,
Who's in charge of that data then? Do we contact our friend Burton, or do we go to Matt Penn, or who?
I would think you'd go to Matt Penn. It's his
And he's
project.
down in Arizona someplace?
He's in Tucson at the National Solar Observatory,
Okay.
but you'll see him here in Weiser.
Will he be in Weiser? Oh, cool.
He's going to be up here at Weiser. That's going to be his camping area during this.
Okay.
Awesome.
Never mind. Just leave it alone.
All right. Well, Burton, thank you again. This is a really cool experiment, and I'm sure you're introducing a little bit of what we do to basically thousands of people across the country. I know the solar eclipse is going to come, and CNN's going to get the picture, and all of us are going to be saying, oh, I'd like a little bit more detail into how they did that. Now we've got it right here. So, or I should say a lot of like-minded people are going to be saying, I wonder how they did that. So now we've got it basically in the public domain.
You have an inside edge on it.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you. Guys, thanks for coming. Next week, I am hoping to do something on off-axis guiding. It's been a suggestion, and I'm taking it. So I'll hope to have that posted midweek, and we'll see you next week. One more thanks to Burton and everyone for watching. Good night.
You're welcome, Adam, and thank you.
Yeah, great.